Hello friends, today I wanted to talk to you about a presentation that I call Tiebreaker, Authentic Living. You often hear that the key to spiritual success is the lack of thoughts, the absence of thoughts. And often people say all it takes is being mindful of the thoughts that are running through us. And I agree with the conclusion that when we are connected to the higher energies, thoughts are really absent. I've experienced that myself. But I do think we can do better. We can be mindful of more dimensions than just thoughts in order to reach that state. So the three dimensions I have in mind are thought, identification, and energy. Tie. That's really what binds us. Starting with identification, that's really where the self hides, the story that we are telling ourselves, the belief that we are what we do, the connection to our partner, to our children, to our life mission. We identify as long as we are here on this planet with something, and that's absolutely fine. But trick of the spiritual living is to become aware of that identification and learn to let go. A very good example in that direction that surprised me this year is my son's college application. I do have a PhD in economics, but that was a long time ago. I thought I just wasn't connected anymore to that academic game, but it turned out when he is now looking into schools, I am very much identified with that search. And as I said, it surprised me. But then I'm also getting my arms around it. I always show up on all the trips to the different cities and the universities is applying to, and I kind of enjoy that very much. So isn't that how we in the end let go of identification? By becoming identified with it and by learning to engage and letting go. I have a second son who's 2 years younger. I'm sure in a couple of years from now I will be much more relaxed about the process and will have much more faith in it. So that's typically what happens when we don't put more energy to whatever it is that we are identified with. It's almost automatic that we learn to let go. Speaking of energy, I often comment on energy in these talks. I claim that we can very much observe within whether energy is flowing or whether it's stuck. And whenever the mind takes over, we kind of experience limit energy, and whenever the heart energy is flowing, we experience how energy becomes much broader. And likewise externally, you can see it in people, in events, in missions. The life talks to us, and that's really how a spiritual living is very easy to get your arms around it by just following the energy. So, thought, identification, energy, we can let go by living authentically, by just understanding there is something about us that does define us. But once again, whether it's a partner, whether it's the children or the mission or the work, whatever it is that we identify with, there's a certain element of humanness that we just have to accept. But as we understand it, and as we let those higher energies flow through us, as we observe how the mind sometimes tries to restrict that flow, we actually learn to live very much authentically. And it's no longer about us, it's literally about the energies flowing through us. Nisargadatta Maharaj had a nice expression of what spiritual living is all about is, he says, we are going down a river. On either side there are two banks, which is either pleasure or pain, and mostly we go flow through it, but sometimes we get stuck on either side, which is fine. Once again, mindfulness to the rescue. When we are too happy, then we start falling in love with our story again. And if life becomes too painful, the voice pops up that tells us that we must be doing something wrong, obviously. But once we're in between, it's not so hard to be mindful. It almost becomes at one point automatic. That's what spiritual living is all about. Let life flow through you, and in a sense you have nothing to look forward to anymore, because in a sense the river is already the extension of that ocean that we are already connected to. So I leave it here. The homework, of course, is to find authentic living. It's a little bit of a process, but once again we have those dimensions where we can be mindful: thought, identification, energy, and it's not so hard to get the hang of it. So I leave it at that. I look forward to seeing you next time around. Until then, all the best.